Hello, everyone. My name is Morgan. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the marketing associate with Attune. Welcome to the workers' compensation overview. We've got Diantha and Brian here to help guide us through. Just a couple housekeeping things before we start. This is a webinar setup, so we won't be able to see or hear you. So if you have any questions, feel free, like you all have been doing so far, just putting any questions, comments, in the chat function or the Q&A function, and we'll answer them as we go along, or we'll have some time at the end for a Q&A. If you have any concerns, like tech concerns, you can feel free to also throw that in the chat, and we'll help you as possible. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian to get us started. And yes, Lisa, this will be recorded, and the recording and the slide deck will be sent out either later today or early tomorrow morning. All right, Brian, all yours.
Do you want to go to the next? Perfect. So just going over today's agenda, I'm going to introduce myself and our relationship manager, Diantha, at Employers. We're going to go a little bit into about employers, a little bit deeper into the appetite and the industry's employers' rights, the employers' value and what they bring and what makes them competitive compared to other carriers, best practices while quoting in the Attune portal, and just overall our relationship with employers, going over the payment plans, and I'm going to run a workers' comp demo, and then lastly, we'll go over some question and answers. So a little bit about me. I started at Attune in July 2019, and I started as a BSA, so I worked on our care team, and then now I moved into working with employers more closely as a carrier partner underwriting assistant. So I've been working with Diantha and her team for about a year now. And so my previous insurance experience, I actually studied risk and insurance at Temple in Philly. And I moved to New York in 2019 to begin my insurance career with Attune. One of my craziest fun facts, I would say, is I rode on a log flume back in high school with Honey Boo Boo and her mom. And lastly, my favorite food is barbecue.
That's funny. Well, hello, everybody. I am Diantha Kelly, and I'm the client relationship manager for digital distribution partners such as Attune. And I've been with employers for over 25 years, spending most of my time in sales since 2007. Prior to that, I was in project management, and I did a little time in underwriting, but you know, I'm better suited for sales. So back over here. So my job function here at Employers now is to work with all of our partners like Attune, and just to make sure that they are achieving the operational excellence in conjunction with how they're working with employers. So it's been really wonderful to work with this group of people, and they're so creative and in the way that they operate. So another previous experience here, before I started this role in the digital space, I was the director of sales excellence and helped our internal sales team advance their skills. There was a lot of training and just process improvement around that. My fun fact is that I spent my senior year of high school living in the Alaskan bush. So that was my, I guess now I can say it was a fun fact. It wasn't so fun back in the day because I was the only senior in my class. I had no other high school people there. It was just my parents. So think about how fun that could be. And then my favorite food, you know, it's hard to say. There's so many great, wonderful dishes out there, and I love to cook. So right now I'm really obsessed with this little easy Italian dish, but it's I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but it really means cheese and pepper. It's cacio e pepe, I think. And I just learned to make homemade sourdough bread, so I'm still trying to perfect that, but I'm having fun doing it. So so employers, let me tell you a little bit about employers. And for those of you who don't know who we are, we've been around for over 100 years. We started in 1913. We were a state fund in Nevada, and we went about 2000. We became a private company. So from there, we expanded. We bought a company called Fremont and rolled. And then we bought AmpComp in, I think it was 2007, that took us on the East Coast. And then from there, we opened up, and now we're in all the states. So we're an admitted A minus excellent rated carrier. We're very proud of that. And we have a very, very broad appetite. And the great thing about our appetite is that we're consistent from one state to another. So if we write restaurants or attorneys in one state, you can expect that we're going to write restaurants and attorneys in another state. We also, had our have just different value props as well. So some of them are association endorsements, like the California Restaurant Association, or we also have the Illinois Restaurant Association. There's about 8 or 9, and we're always looking to grow. When there is an opportunity, when one of your clients has, for example, if they're a member of the California Restaurant Association, they'll save 5% off their workers' comp, just because they're a member. And all we need is their member number to apply that credit. So then we also have, for, when there are claims, we really try to make it a really good experience for injured employees. We want them to feel cared for and taken care of from the get-go. So we have our injured employee hotline, which is managed by nurses in that they'll triage those claims and make sure that people are getting to the right place to take care of them. So if it's an emergency room or if it's first aid, they're going to help triage that claim and get them to the right place quickly. We also have a transitional job duties, which is a really cool a return to work program. So we do have some creative ways to get people off the couch and back to work and being a contributing member of society. And hopefully we'll have time to talk more about that. And then we have some more, we have some very flexible payment options. So, and again, I mean, this relationship is fairly new with Attune. I mean, but it's been very powerful. And we began this relationship in 2018. And Brian, am I going over your part right here? Was this when you were going to do?
I can go over it. So,
okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So Attune and Employers began the relationship in 2018. It is Attune's third product. So we originally, as everyone knows, we do offer a bot product and excess. So this moved into our third product, the workers' comp. We offer a competitive commission with employers, with our relationship with employers. And lastly, we have direct access with employers, so you won't need a direct appointment. Any quoting and binding can just go through Attune.
So the great thing about our appetite is that 75% of all of the businesses that fall that are out there in the United States fall within our appetite, and we are. We have expanded a few classes, which we'll go over in a little bit. It's pretty exciting, but we do have, that Main Street type business that you see everywhere, from the manufacturers, retail, restaurants, hospitality, garages, gas stations, things like that. And again, we're consistent across the United States. There are only 4 monopolistic states in the country, and we cannot write there. Those are written by their states, which is Washington, Wyoming, North Dakota, and Ohio. So that would be like a state fund in those areas.
And then, sorry, Diantha, to cut you off. Quickly adding to that about the monopolistic states, employers also can't write insureds that have business in one monopolistic state and a non-monopolistic state, they have to consider the full ops. So just keep that in mind as well when you're quoting.
Oh, great call out, Brian. That's good. Thank you. One thing we've done recently, probably within the last year, is we've actually increased the premium size for a straight through quote for. So when you go onto the Attune portal and you have maybe a restaurant that you're writing in California or New Jersey, you can get a quote up to $50,000 in premium without underwriting intervention. So that's, and then of course in other states, for example, DC, Kentucky, you can get a quote up to $30,000. So we have increased that threshold so you can get more quotes faster on the glass as fast as possible and into the hands of your insured.
So just going over some of the popular class codes Employers offers. So Employers offers hospitality and food services, retail stores and drivers, bars and nightclubs, and medical services. So diving deeper into hospitality and food services, applicants who offer delivery are subject to referral. And that really depends on the delivery exposures, like how far they drive, if they use motorcycles or bikes. Those are quick knockouts if they do any bike delivery or motorcycle. The top classes under hospitality and food would be bed and breakfast, country clubs, restaurants, food trucks, and casual dining. Moving into retail stores and drivers, Employers allows applicants up to 50-mile delivery radius. So anything more than that would unfortunately be ineligible. Moving down, the sale of CBD, vapes, e-cigarettes, and I also want to include hookah flavorings too. So that's really important with a lot of like delis and specifically in the New York area, I see those. So just keep that in mind with the hookah flavorings as well. And then the top classes include clothing stores, electronic stores, cell phone stores, florists, and supermarkets. Moving down into bars and nightclubs. With these classes, applicants must have 2 or more employees on duty at all times. Ineligible applicants would include organized raves, gentlemen clubs, or any crowd control, armed security, any cover collecting out front. And the top classes with this, under this industry would be bars, wineries, and beer gardens. So just really keep that in mind about the armed security, any crowd control. Those are big knockouts with Employers. And then lastly on this slide, medical services. So ineligible ops would be rehab clinics, hospitals, or emergency room. And top classes here would include dentists, optometrists, psychologists, and physicians. And one thing I want to point out here is I notice a lot of our agents will quote medical office employees as clerical. However, you should be using the physician class because there is patient interaction in medical offices. So a lot of the class codes for physicians include that clerical. However, if you don't see it, you can still use the physician and it will capture that governing class code for the medical office.
So, oh, go ahead, and I'll jump in this.
Okay, so we are offering Employers, I want to say, Diantha, you can correct me, end of last year, we started offering landscapers. So with this in mind, Employers is looking for landscapers that are involved in like flower and small bush maintenance, like trimming, mowing, like lawn mowing, blowing leaves. Hardscaping must be less than 50%. So any sort of like paving, like outdoor, like patio work, and also snow removal must be less than 25%. And as mentioned, so ineligible operations under landscapers would be tree trimming or any sort of work on ladders over 8 feet. This is really important. And then also swimming pool contractors, so no swimming pool maintenance, no construction, no excavation work, and lastly, no work with mature trees, whether that be removing them or transplanting them or putting in new trees.
Big giant ones.
Mhm.
Back claims, yeah.
And then another new contractor class we're offering, or two, are plumbers and also HVAC. So the underwriting questions are similar for both of these. So employers looks for HVAC contractors who install, repair, and maintain HVAC systems, plumbers who install, fit, repair, and maintain water, waste disposal, drainage, and gas systems, and any sort of work with residential, commercial, industrial, and other buildings is eligible. And then moving on to the ineligible operations would be 35% or more of the work is subcontracted out. Work or drilling below 5 feet, use of ladders, lifts, or climb over 30 feet. So this is a little different than the landscaper. Maintain, install industrial boilers, work on well pumps or septic or oil tanks, work on gas, sewer, or water mains, and lastly, perform remediation of asbestos, mold, or radon. And then just generally going over our top workers' comp classes that we write. We write a lot of hotels and motels, automotive services, so like an auto garage, clerical offices, physicians, retail stores and drivers, colleges, restaurants, beverage preparation shops, meat stores, and supermarkets.
So Brian, can I just jump in there really quick? I know a lot of people are asking a lot of questions about some of the really hard to place contractors or high hazard. Employers isn't really a company that looks at high hazard stuff. So when we are kind of dipping our toes into some of the, like the plumbers and the landscapers, and we're really excited about that, but we are really, we're not going to do any, long haul trucking, any, and then also the questions about home healthcare. We do have a program for home healthcare, but that is in our programs team. And so it is not available to everybody. It's a closed program. I think I wanted just to make sure that people understood that we just, we are Main Street. We usually look to write medium to low hazard risks. So where people aren't really going to get, it would be more of a severity claim versus a frequency claim. So just kind of keep that in mind. That's why you see more the Main Street type stuff. You drive down the street and you see all of these types of what you have on the screen right here. You're going to see those in your local downtown street. So I hope that helps.
So I want to just highlight a couple questions here that we have open before we go to that next slide. So Fran asked, I don't know if this is something that anyone here can answer, but Fran asked, what's the difference between employers and the New York State Fund? I'm guessing that's what we're supposed to say.
New York State Fund is probably a quasi-government entity where employers is a private carrier.
Thanks so much, Diantha. And John asked, why is Texas not listed? I think that's in reference to the monopolistic states.
That was my oversight. I know I need to add it to the threshold as well, the premium thresholds. That was $50,000 for Texas that you can quote straight through. So bring it on.
And someone asked, is current workers' comp insurance required?
In most cases, in all states except for Texas and Oklahoma, I think there's some rules around, like if you don't want a workers' comp policy, and I think it's for a certain employee size. So somebody in Texas probably knows this better than I do, but I believe that if it's under 25 employees, you don't have to have a comp, but you would have to have like a disability plan or something like that. So if anybody knows better, maybe just put it in the chat. I think Oklahoma kind of follows suit, but I think most insureds see the value in getting a workers' comp policy versus going at it on their own, on their own risk.
Cool. Looks like, what happened here?
I think we went too fast.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Sorry, everyone. But I would also just like to reiterate that if you have any eligibility questions, you should probably just keep them to yourself for now. Just write on a piece of paper. You can either just do a quote after this webinar, or you can pop onto our Attune portal and just ask our customer care team. They'll be able to give you a much more specific answer than we can right now, because they'll just gather a little more information. So if you're looking for just some clarity on a specific class code, please ask away. But if you're asking for like a specific business that you are looking to cover right now, it's probably best to ask our customer care team. So let me just see. Looks like we have a lot of questions about the payment options, which we will go through. I think I just accidentally skipped a slide. So anything else that we want to add before we go into the next slide?
Just one more thing. Somebody was asking if the healthcare industry is low risk. We do write doctors, physicians, dentists, dental labs, things like that. But when we're talking about home health, maybe elderly care, ambulatory type things, that is a closed program. So yes, we love doctors and, surgery centers. So we'd love to see those.
And someone asked, I have just two questions before we go on to the next slide, but someone asked, does employers require a current policy to quote?
So are you asking okay, we will write a brand new venture. So if somebody's new in business, that's great. We will write them. Obviously they're new, so they don't have anybody. Best to make sure that they don't have any employees working prior to getting coverage, because at that point we do consider that a lapse in coverage. If we have employees already working and now you're trying to get coverage, even if they're new. So that's how we look at new business. But if there was a current policy that was enforced, or they have employees, they let their current coverage lapse, we don't write a lapse in coverage.
Great, thank you. And then one last one, which I think we'll go over in a minute, but someone asked, is there a minimum payroll required?
Yes. $0. So we will write a ghost policy for everything except for the plumbers and HVAC at this point. So we will, so if you have 0 employees, 0 owners, we'll write that. All policies are audited. So we will make sure, at the end of the year that, they didn't hire somebody or whatever, but we're happy to write ghost policies for you. But for plumbers and HVAC, if we actually, and then any other future contractors, if we do get those, expand our classes into more I'm struggling to say this, more artisan contractors, then we will require a $50,000 payroll threshold.
Great, thanks, Diantha. All right, let's move along here.
Okay, so just going over the best practices, and I'm going to take everyone through a portal demonstration, but just to keep in mind while quoting, always make sure the FEIN is properly entered while quoting. And this is really important because, say, an outside agency, not Attune, comes in and quotes this with a proper FEIN, and you quoted it with an improper FEIN, employers is going to go with the first agency who properly quotes this business as the broker of record. And then moving along into payroll accuracy, Diantha just talked about this, but you just want to make sure you enter in the most accurate payroll possible. And this is really important in terms of the final premium audit at the end that just matches up the estimated annual premium with the actual at the end of the year. And so if it's severely underreported, the insured might have a large bill at the end and it could frustrate them. And it would just be easier to have the insured make smaller payments over the course of 12 months instead. And then we also recommend just having a just like proper business description entered while quoting, making sure all the class codes are accounted for if a business has multiple operations. And I mentioned this earlier, but with the clerical exposure, you want to make sure that we have a governing class code. So employers can write clerical, like an accounting office with no outside travel can be used under clerical. However, if there are overall operations, like say a restaurant that has an accountant, you would want the restaurant to be the governing class, and you can always add a 8810 clerical. And then lastly, going over officer exclusions. So our portal, and I'll show you what it looks like in a few minutes, but our portal will automatically apply the state laws for officer exclusions. So if you're trying to include an officer that's already automatically included per state law, our portal won't let you, and vice versa with exclusions. And then just briefly touching on exclusions too, with California in specific, you just want to make sure after bind, you forward the, or along with your bind request, just forward the exclusion form along, because I believe California is the only state that requires it with employers at bind. So you just want to make sure the any officers are excluded, that you send that in.
Let me just, are you needing the form for Attune? Because right now, as long as they put that in your portal, it should be okay. We don't need the form ourselves. We need the agents to hold that in their files.
Okay, because so I thought before. Oh, okay, that's okay, cool.
Yeah,
okay.
that was a new change, relatively new. And
Okay.
So we just want to make sure that everybody has that form, that you filled it out, and you keep it for your files, because we will pull random audits on Attune once in a while. We love to surprise them and say, hey, we want this account. So they may have to ask you for the proper exclusion forms to be presented.
Cool, thanks, Diantha.
No problem.
And we just have one question in the Q&A about the officer exclusion, I believe. Carmine asked, many businesses now have 3 or 4 partners. Most companies will only charge $100 payroll for an inactive partner. Will employers do the same?
We don't charge for if an officer is excluded from the policy, and if they can be excluded, because there are certain states that won't let them exclude. So it all depends on the state, and I don't have them all memorized. So we would really lean on you to know those state laws. But if you exclude the officer, then they're excluded from coverage. We wouldn't be picking up any premium on them. We don't charge for that. We only charge for included officers when it's required or they opt in. We're picking up their payroll, and then we'll apply the rate accordingly.
Great, thanks, Diantha.
Good question.
And then just going over the payment plans employers offer. So it depends on the premium size. So just going down the list, 100% down annual pay is available for everyone. Quarterly pay, which 30% down in 3 equal installments, that's available for policies over 1,000. And that the same goes along with 20% down in 9 equal installments, policy size over 1,000. And then 10% down, 9 equal installments, that is for policies over 2,500. And lastly, employers offers a pay-as-you-go program called Precise Pay. And that is available for policies over 1,500.
So just real quick on the Precise Pay. So everything is a direct bill here. So the agent, Attune, and any of the agents are not responsible for collecting money. But I would say that if you are going to sell the Precise Pay pay plan, you just need to prepare your insured to make sure that this is a self-reporting tool, or we do have some preferred vendors that they could use, like maybe Smart Pay, or I'm trying to think of some other companies. I'll get Morgan a list of our preferred providers that we're using with them. But if they're using those, then the vendor can report their payroll every pay period. But if the insured decides to self-report, they would report their payroll to us every pay period on our policyholder portal. So they would have access to the portal. And it is really imperative to make sure that your insured goes online and registers for the portal and finishes the registration for Precise Pay. So there is a little work on their side. We have seen some, I think that, you know, we really need your help. This is a great pay plan, but we need your help to make sure that your insured is prepared that they do need to do something.
Yeah, and then also adding on to that too, Diantha, it's 20 days they have to enroll.
I think it's 20 days. Oh, it's very soon because usually payrolls happen every 2 weeks. So we want to make sure that they don't go too long without reporting their payroll, or they're going to owe a big chunk.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that because if they do not set up Precise Pay within, I believe it's 20 days from bind, employers will change them to a payment plan and they won't be able to enroll in Precise Pay until the following year. So you just want to make sure the insured has that set up as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the good stuff.
Share my screen.
While he's doing that, can I just mention, somebody's asking about ADP and Paychecks. They are a separate payroll company they have a brokerage. So they do have their own reporting system. Attune doesn't really work with them. And so, and they don't use Precise Pay. So that's completely different.
And just addressing some other questions while we wait for the portal to come up, but
Morgan.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Would you mind actually just sharing, can you get into staging for me and just do it on your end? It's making me sign out and like re-sign in.
Yeah.
Perfect.
While you're doing that, I can look at some of these questions. Somebody asked, can you address midterm work comp quote versus at expiration? I'm not sure what that. So Lynn, if you can elaborate on that question, that would be helpful. I'm not sure what you mean there, because usually if we have a policy in place, we would do midterm endorsements, or maybe you're possibly thinking, can we move something midterm and write something midterm? We prefer not to. Sometimes there's an occasion that we would, but it's not standard practice. It's not good for the insured to be moved away from another carrier. They could, if you move them to replace coverage with another carrier, there could be a short-term penalty for leaving. So you just gotta weigh that with the other carrier and consider if they're going to save the insured money, if that's the question.
Okay.
All right, so we're sharing now. I think that there's probably a question that we should just address because I know that we want to really highlight this. Alan asked, are brokers allowed to contact employers directly to service insurance policies, or should all policy servicing be handled through Attune?
So I can take that question. So all servicing requests and any sort of underwriting questions, billing and inquiries should be directed through Attune and not directly through employers. The insured can contact employers directly to pay a bill or with any sort of final premium audit assistance. However, employers will not speak with our sub agents because they only recognize Attune as the broker of record, where we recognize your agencies internally. Employers doesn't know, doesn't have a list of which agent belongs to what. So we just ask that all requests go through Attune, and we'll be able to reach out to employers on your behalf.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Mhm. And then just before you hop into start a new quote, if just wanted to point out the bottom right-hand screen of the screen, you'll see that little support button. At any time, you can chat with our care team just by clicking that. It'll just give you some auto questions, but you can just, and there's a lot of answers in our regarding workers' comp. Any sort of questions that you may have could be answered there. And if you don't see anything there, our care team is available 9 to 6, Monday through Friday, Eastern time.
And also, I just want to address a question that someone had earlier, which is if you are looking for our latest guidelines, we have the workers' comp underwriting guidelines here. So if you're someone that likes to read through a nice PDF or print something out, we've got the most up-to-date ones right here. Going to start a new quote, Brian?
Sweet. Yep. Okay. So Morgan, you can pick any name.
Going to be a bakery.
Sweet. And then just the DBA, in this case, it's just we're in our staging environment, but employers does really want the DBA there. So it helps just making sure we understand the full operation. So just keep that in mind while quoting as well.
What state would you like to be in, Brian?
We can just do New York if you want, or. And then I recommend putting in a description of the operations. It is optional. It just helps our team better understand the risk. And then moving down, description of business. So this will just be the general overall operations of the business. So here we'll type in bakery since Morgan owns a bakery in this case. And then you can just click that one. And then you'll see across the board which products bakeries are eligible for. So you'll see it's eligible for BOP, workers' comp, cyber. And then so we'll just click workers' comp. And then here, so Morgan, if you wouldn't mind typing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that way, just keep going until 9. I think there's 9 in an FEIN, and then go to years in business. So this is really important. I wanted to show everyone, going back to the why we want the real FEIN, you'll get a warning just if you try putting in a placeholder, just to make sure that you are entering in the correct FEIN, you'll get that warning message. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And then years in business, you can put whatever. And then locations, we'll just do 1 for convenience. And then number of employees, 5. And then here is where you'll enter the specific class code for the employees. So here we'll put bakery. And then so we'll pick that 2003 class code. So this class code would include the bakery, retail store, and any sort of baking operations and driving. But there are specific underwriting criteria with the driving. So we'll get to that at the end. And then the payroll, I just want to make sure it goes through. And Morgan, I'm sorry too, can you change the FEIN to like a random number too? It's going to decline if we put that one. Perfect. So why don't we put 400,000? And then down here, this is where you add the owner's exclusion or inclusion under executive elections. So we'll click add executive, and then we'll type in their full name and their title. And then so here, this is where I wanted to point out how our portal works with exclusions and inclusions. Morgan, would you mind clicking included? And then, actually, I'm sorry, click excluded and then try to hit next down below. So here, Morgan selected LLC as the entity type. So with LLCs, you cannot exclude an officer because LLC members in New York are automatically excluded. So Morgan could be included, but Morgan could not be excluded because it's in our system at least, because they are the state law automatically applies. If that makes sense to everyone.
It's just, it's a little confusing, but it really is that there's no need to exclude because the state already excludes them. So
and then, yeah, one important thing to note too, I know, like I said, that is really confusing, but if you get that error message, can't exclude, you can always reach out to us to just make sure everything is excluded properly, but don't put included just to have the officer's name listed on the policy, because they could be picked up for payroll that should not have been included in the first place. I do see that here and there. So just you can always chat in to make sure your quote is accurate, but don't click include if you're trying to exclude the officer.
right. Otherwise, yeah, just think of it as opting in or opting out.
Mm-hmm. And then you can click next, Morgan. Thanks. And Vivian, I see your question here. That's correct. So if they're automatically excluded, you don't have to list them. Our portal won't let you enter them in. You can just leave them off if they're automatically excluded. Mm-hmm. And then policy info is the next slide. So you'll type in the effective date. We'll do today's date. And then here's where you choose the liability limits. So we can just pick any random one. And then here's where you'll enter in loss info. Employers typically ask, well, it depends on years in business, but they typically ask for 4 years of loss experience. So here, Morgan, if you wouldn't mind just clicking one of the boxes. And then you'll enter in the number of claims, the total amount paid, and the total amount reserved. However, if you don't, I wouldn't put any claims. I just want to show everyone the how it works. But if there are no claims, don't check any of the boxes. You can just leave this blank. But like I said, if there are claims, just make sure to click a box. And then you can click next. And then here's the class specific underwriting questions. So up at the top, you're going to have to check off a box that you maintain the correct officer exclusion forms, that you have them on file, and that that you've complied with all the workers' comp law regarding the exclusions. And then moving down, these are the general underwriting questions that are asked for every class code. So does the applicant engage in subcontractors or independent contractors? And Morgan, if you wouldn't mind clicking that box there. So there are, some of the questions do have follow-up questions. So if they do engage in subcontractors or independent contractors, do they collect COIs from them? Employers does require any sort of subcontracted work or independent contracted work. COIs, they do require COIs collected. And then, so you can uncheck that one. And then those are just going over. And there weren't any class specific underwriting questions I didn't see for bakery, but, and then
The one
here,
thing to keep in mind, one of the questions that gets, sorry, Brian, one of the questions that gets missed a lot, like especially with plumbers or anybody that, driving is part of the class code. We see that they miss that. Do you use motor vehicles a lot? They say no. Well, we just know that you do, because you can't magically, you're not taking the bus to do your plumbing job. So we're going to assume that.
and then, so Morgan, if you can just scroll down a little. So this is what it looks like for when a quote is released, and you can just go in and bind, and I'll show you how to bind in a second. But if you see where it says status, if you see a quote is, if a quote gets referred, that area will just say referred. And then, so what happens when a quote is referred is it's sent to employers. Our employers underwriter, Brittany, who's not on the call today, but she'll review it, reach out to our team. Myself and another teammate, Bradley, are the ones who typically handle the referrals. So we'll reach out to you as the agent and confirm anything Brittany needs to finalize the quote and make a decision. And then that quote will appear in in the portal once the quote is approved. If it's declined, it will also say decline there. And then Morgan, if you want to click bind, I can show what that looks like as well.
And just because this, for whatever reason, came up in the staging environment, if you do have this little message that comes up, you can easily, again, just click this support tab here, just enter in your email address and be like, I can't get my quote document, and hit send, and it'll immediately connect you with our customer care team via live chat, and they can get you that document.
And to be aware today, I think there is, I haven't checked with the engineers since the meeting started, but I think there is a little bit of an issue today pulling quote documents in the portal. So if you just let us know, let our care team know if you have any issues today. But the error is, I've made the engineers aware of it. So, and then, so here's what it looks like to bind. So you just want to make sure you read through this and confirm. And then you confirm the effective date, the FEIN. You want to confirm the mailing address. And this is, I forgot to mention this during the quote too. So employers will not let you bind with a PO box as the location address. And so when you're doing a quote, you just want to make sure that our system will pre-populate the mailing address as the location address. And so it'll pre-populate a PO box if the insured does have a PO box as a location address. Just make sure that's changed before you finish the quote, or else you'll get an error at bind. And then, so just moving down, you'll enter the insured's email and phone number. The mailing address is the same as billing address. You'll answer that. You'll select a payment plan here. And then I think that's it. And then you'll just click bind quote. Morgan, do we have time to do a quick contractor quote for Lynn?
I mean, sure, we have 10 minutes.
Okay, cool.
We can at the very least just go through the first
Okay,
parts of it.
So, yep, so this is what it looks like right after bind. You will receive an actual error message that says policy documents failed to load. That essentially means that in the it takes 24 hours for employers to actually generate the policy documents. So you won't actually see the policy for 24 hours after bind, but however, it will pop up in the portal 24 hours later. And we will also email you a copy of the policy document and the first invoice to the binding agent's email. So like I said, it'll be in the portal 24 hours after bind, and 24 hours after bind, we'll also email you a copy.
Brian, we have a question here, which is just about like once I bind a policy, is there any additional forms that I need to have the insured sign?
Yep. So I would just, for good housekeeping, always have the exclusion form available. You don't need to send that in, as we mentioned. And then with Florida, you'll need to send in the Florida Accord 130. And with that document, you'll need to have Attune's information listed, not your actual agency. Because employers, like I said, they do only recognize Attune as the agent of record. So that Florida Accord should list Attune. But also, it does need to list your specific agency's name and license number, or agent name and license number. So you'll put Attune at the top and then say Brian Holst, license number 12345. So just keep that in mind. If you have any questions with that, like I said, you can always reach out to us as well. But no other documents for any other states.
Cool. And then before we do this, the artisan classes quote, do we just want to go over some audit information? Just because I know that was like an important thing we wanted to touch on.
Oh, yes. So regarding the final premium audit, Attune does not get involved in the audit. So what we can do to help the insured, if you completed the audit and want us to forward your audit docs to employers, we're happy to do that. But unfortunately, we're not able to advise on the audit. We're not able to assist because the audit's really based on the insured's payroll and their tax and payroll documentation that we don't have access to and we are not comfortable advising on. So you really just want to make sure the insured reaches out to employers directly for any sort of audit assistance or work with their accountant who can both work with employers to get that handled. But Attune unfortunately cannot get involved in the audit. Like I said, we can forward any documents once you complete the audit to employers, but we will not assist in completing it.
And then just to piggyback on that, Employers does offer online premium audit for the insured. So to make it so much less intimidating for them, they're just going to go online. They're going to put in their, payroll for the year per class. And if it's, usually if it's a very simple single state, single location, it's pretty easy to just like process that endorsement. It almost happens automatically overnight. So it could just be done quickly. It's really important that the insureds comply with the audit. If they don't comply, there could be penalties, up to 3 times penalties. And then if they go into a non-compliant status, they could be canceled and not subject to reinstatement. So we don't want them to fall into that. And the really great thing is that, we would just, if you guys set up the account correctly in the beginning of the policy term, or even make sure that you keep up with it midterm, then there won't be any surprises at audit if payroll is underestimated. So there's no additional large charge. So the better we do upfront writing the policy, the less poor experience. Let's put it this way: they're going to have a great experience at audit. It'll be easy, and that's and Attune's here to help you make sure that the policy is set up great. So,
Thank you both. All right, I will go back to Spitz. We can power through an artisan contractor quote.
Sweet. Want to do a plumber?
Any state that we want to do this time?
It doesn't really matter. Yep, you can click that top one. And you can do that third one down. Yep. And then payroll, I would do like 50K.
if you did less than 50, you'll get a decline.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb, I don't know if this was Diantha mentioned this, but they do, when with payroll, at least look for, you want to keep in mind like the minimum wage of the state to kind of go based off payroll. It's going to end up in a decline if the employers are making less than minimum wage. That's excluding ghost policies and zero payroll, but. And then, so this class does have class specific underwriting questions. So does the applicant subcontract 30% or more work? We can make that no. And then Morgan, applicant uses motor vehicles for the general question. And then you can answer those favorably as well. Yep, and then you can submit that one.
And then if you didn't know, Attune has rewards. So if you play the quote game, it'll get you rewards that you can cash in for like Amazon gift cards and Starbucks rewards and stuff like that. So
That's fun.
And then this is what a release quote looks like straight through for a plumber. Let me see if there's any questions. No.
So Morgan, I think that we missed a few questions. Would we be able to, review them after the call and make sure that we send out some of the questions? I think I saw one for Pennsylvania class code and I didn't recognize it off the top of my head. I have to look it up and see what it is and things like that. So
yeah, definitely. And I think there's a question here. I will be sending out the recording and the slides and any sort of materials that we can either later today after the webinar or tomorrow. And they'll be sent to everyone who registered. So even if there's some people at your agency or pals that couldn't make it today and they registered, we'll be sending it out and it'll be available to all brokers afterwards. You can just chat into our customer care team as soon as a couple days and they'll have access to all that to send to you. All right, well, I think we should probably call it a day, but thank you so much, Brian and Diantha, for leading us through this workers' comp webinar. I definitely learned so much and super helpful, and I hope everyone felt the same way.
me too. I love the engagement. Great group of people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone
Drinks on
for
Attune.
attending.
All right.
All right, well,
Thank you,
everyone
guys.
have a lovely day. Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.